A millionaire invites her maid to the luxury party with the intention of humiliating her, but everyone invited was shocked when the employee took the microphone. Olivia woke up early as usual. The room he lived in was a true work of art, decorated with imported furniture and valuable paintings. When she got out of bed, she wrapped herself in a silk robe and walked to the mirror. The reflected image filled her with pride, and with a slight smile, she began her routine. Each morning was filled with beauty treatments and meticulous care, taking up hours of her day. While Olivia was enjoying her appearance and getting lost in thoughts about her luxurious life, Grace was already on her way to the mansion. The simple backpack she carried contained her cleaning supplies, and even after a busy morning, it always arrived on time. Grace lived in a modest apartment outside the city with her son, Daniel. She would get up before the sun to prepare his breakfast, make sure he was ready for school, and, with a tender kiss on the forehead, watch him enter the institution's doors. Then, I faced a crowded bus to work. Arriving at the mansion, Grace passed through the back entrance and went straight to the kitchen. The house looked spotless, but she knew it would be a long day. As he prepared his cleaning materials, he heard Olivia's voice echoing from another room. "Grace, come here immediately." The order was filled with impatience. "I want all the windows cleaned today. Make sure you vacuum the carpets well too. Last time they were full of dust," Olivia said dismissively. "Yes, Miss Olivia, I'll start right now," Grace replied with a polite smile, although inside she felt exhausted. While Grace started the tasks, Olivia answered a call from her friend Marcella. The conversation revolved around preparations for his grand birthday party. "You're going to love the decor. I hired the best designers in town," Olivia said excitedly, completely ignoring the presence of Grace, who was meticulously cleaning the floor beside her. On the other hand, Grace thought about Daniel. "I reflected on how I could offer him a better future. Despite the challenges, he never lost his determination." On his lunch break, he sat in the kitchen with a simple sandwich and for a brief moment allowed himself to dream of the days when he sang. The talent, stifled by life's difficulties, still shined within her. Olivia, upon entering the kitchen, interrupted the moment of reflection. "Shouldn't you be working right now? The party is coming, and this house needs to be perfect." "Sorry, Ma'am, I was finishing my lunch. I'll be right back to work," Grace replied, getting up hurriedly. Olivia, in another room, leafed through whimsical decor catalogues. Determined to impress her wealthy friends, she planned to make the event the most lavish of the year. However, there was something else on his mind, an idea to publicly humiliate Grace. "Grace, come here. I need to talk to you," Olivia called, without even looking up from the catalogue. Grace entered the room slowly, drying her hands on her apron. Olivia's gaze, which seemed welcoming at first glance, made her uncomfortable. There was something about her smile, a stiffness, as if it was just to fulfill a role. Grace hesitated before asking, "Yes, Miss Olivia?" Olivia stepped forward, crossed her arms, and said with a strange gleam in her eyes, "I'm organizing my birthday party, and I want you and your son Daniel to be there. You'll be my guests." Grace blinked in surprise. "I wasn't used to invitations that didn't involve work." "Ma'am, I don't know if it would be appropriate. Daniel and I don't have suitable clothes for something like this," he replied carefully, trying to understand the real intention behind Olivia's words. With a smile that seemed as generous as it was calculated, Olivia shook her head. "Oh, don't worry about that, Grace. I'm sure you can manage it. After all, in a way, you're part of my life, aren't you?" Grace knew that refusing would be risky. He needed to keep his job and didn't want to disappoint Daniel, who would be excited about the idea of going to a party. Then with a sigh, he agreed, "Okay, we'll be there." Over the next few days, anxiety took over Grace. He mentioned the invitation to a friend on the bus. He encouraged her to go, saying it was a rare opportunity to break out of her routine. Even though she was suspicious, Grace decided to prepare the best she could for the big day. Meanwhile, Olivia seemed to be even more excited. He chose every detail of the decoration, from the buffet to the exotic flowers, with an enthusiasm that hid his real intentions. The party was an opportunity for something more than just celebration. On the morning of the event, Daniel couldn't hide his excitement. "Mom, are we really going to a party?" he asked, his eyes shining as he helped Grace choose the most presentable clothes. "Yes, son, let's do our best to enjoy it," he replied, trying to hide his own insecurity. When they arrived, the house was magnificent. Lights twinkled everywhere, exotic flowers decorated the corners, and the buffet table looked like something out of a dream. The guests, all elegantly dressed, circulated around the room. As soon as Grace and Daniel entered, eyes turned to them. Whispers began to echo throughout the room. Olivia came to greet them with a radiant smile, but Grace caught the false tone. "Ah, you came. Come, I want to introduce you to my friends." Olivia took Grace by the arm and began to show her off, emphasizing with each introduction that Grace was the maid of the house. "This is Grace. She takes care of everything here with so much care and dedication," Olivia said to a group of guests, who laughed discreetly. Grace smiled politely, but every word felt like a jab. It was clear that Olivia's goal was to humiliate her. Daniel, noticing his mother's discomfort, held her hand tightly, offering silent support. Grace took a deep breath and mentally thanked Daniel for his silent support. She knew that Olivia had more intentions behind that invitation, but she still tried to maintain her composure. From afar, Olivia watched with a calculated smile, waiting for the right moment to execute the next step of her plan. As the party continued lively, music filled the luxurious atmosphere, and guests laughed and chatted among themselves, enjoying cocktails and refined snacks. Grace and Daniel remained discreet in a corner, trying not to attract attention. Daniel, eyes wide with admiration, observed every detail of the party, while Grace maintained a shy smile, fighting her growing discomfort. Olivia, on the other hand, could barely contain her excitement. When he thought the moment was perfect, he raised a glass of champagne and tapped it lightly with a silver spoon, drawing everyone's attention. "Attention, please," she announced in a firm voice as the guests turned to her. Grace felt a chill as she realized that Olivia was staring directly at her. "I want to take a little break from the party for a special moment," Olivia began, smiling widely. "As you all know, my beloved employee, Grace, is here with us tonight, along with her son, Daniel. Grace is more than just an employee. She is practically part of the family." Olivia's speech was met with smiles and murmurs of approval, but Grace knew this wasn't genuine praise. "As a thank you," Olivia continued, now with a mischievous glint in her eyes, "I would like to ask her to share a special talent with us. Grace, please come sing for us." Silence took over the room. All eyes turned to Grace, who was paralyzed. Her heart raced, and her face grew hot with embarrassment. Daniel, at her side, looked at his mother with admiration. "Mom, you can sing. I know you can," he whispered, squeezing her hand in a gesture of encouragement. Grace felt the weight of the moment. Olivia wanted to humiliate her, but Daniel's confident look gave her the courage she needed. With a tentative smile at her son, she said, "Okay, I'll sing." The entire room watched as Grace slowly walked to the center. A microphone was already prepared, as if Olivia knew the plan would work. Grace closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the songs she used to sing to Daniel when he was little. He took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and began to sing. His voice, soft and melodious, echoed throughout the room. At first, the guests just watched, curious. But as the music flowed, something changed. Grace's voice was incredibly beautiful, full of emotion. The murmurs stopped, and everyone fell into absolute silence, completely captivated by the performance. Olivia, who had expected laughter and jeers, was completely stunned. As she watched the guests, she noticed in disbelief that one by one they were swept away by the beauty and emotion of Grace's music. At the end of the song, the room exploded in applause. Grace opened her eyes, surprised and moved by the reaction. "It was incredible!" exclaimed one of the guests, approaching her. "You have an incredible talent!" Among those present, a middle-aged man, elegantly dressed, stood out with his confident posture. He walked towards Grace once the commotion subsided. "My name is Lucas. I'm a music producer. Grace, your voice is wonderful. I'd like to talk to you about an opportunity," he said, extending his hand. Grace, still dazed by the whirlwind of emotions, hesitated. There was surprise and gratitude, but also a shadow of distrust. All of this was only happening because Olivia had tried to humiliate her. Inside she felt angry, but she managed to hide it with a forced smile. "Of course, Mr. Lucas, but I don't know what to say. This is so unexpected," Grace replied, still processing the situation. "You have a rare talent, Grace, and it deserves to be seen and heard by everyone," Lucas replied with an encouraging smile. Olivia, seeing that her plan had failed miserably, tried to compose herself. Despite a smile that appeared calm, inside she was boiling with anger. While Lucas guided Grace into a more reserved conversation, Olivia followed, trying to keep up appearances. In the quiet room, Lucas praised Grace's performance and explained how he could help her launch a music career. Grace, still in disbelief at the sudden change in her fortunes, felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "I can't believe this is happening to me. Thank you, Mr. Lucas. I never imagined something like this," she said emotionally. The party continued, but the atmosphere had completely changed. The guests began to look at Grace and Daniel with new admiration. Olivia's plan of humiliation had turned into a moment of triumph for Grace. But even so, Olivia, determined to regain control, was already beginning to plan her next move. At the end of the night, as they said goodbye, Grace shook Daniel's hand. "Let's go home. It's been a long night." "Mom, you were amazing. I'm so proud of you," Daniel replied, smiling with admiration. As they walked outside, Grace felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. I knew challenges were still ahead, especially with Olivia around. But at that moment, she had something that no one could take away. Her dignity, her son's unconditional love, and who knows, a new chance at a better future. The morning after the party, Grace woke up feeling different. A lightness took over her, but it wasn't long before the phone, left silent, began to vibrate non-stop. There were incessant messages and calls. Lucas, the music producer, had sent several voice messages, all filled with urgency and enthusiasm. He wanted to set up a meeting to discuss details of a contract. Grace was in shock. "I can't believe what's happening," he muttered as he looked at his cell phone screen. Daniel, his son, entered the room curious. "Mum, what's going on? Why is the phone ringing so much?" Grace smiled, trying to hide the mixture of nervousness and happiness. "I think it's because of the party last night, son. It seems like there are people who like my music. Mr. Lucas wants to help me get my songs to more people." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Grace met with Lucas several times. He introduced professionals from the music industry, opened doors she had never imagined, and before long, she was rehearsing for her first public performances. Initially, the events were small, but they soon began to attract more attention. Grace felt like she was living a dream, but she was staying grounded because of Daniel. "Mom, are you going to sing again tonight?" Daniel asked, his eyes shining with expectation. "Yes, my love, and you're going with me. We'll always go together no matter where it is," replied Grace, caressing her son's face. Their lives began to change quickly. Small shows gave way to big events, and Grace's name became known throughout the city. They were able to move into a bigger apartment where Daniel finally had his own room and space to play. Despite the fame and changes, Grace was still humble and grateful. "Daniel, I will never forget where we come from. Everything we do is for our future, but we will always be the same people," said Grace, determined to teach her son important values. Meanwhile, Grace's rise hasn't gone unnoticed by Olivia. The looks of envy and whispers became constant when they passed each other on the street or at social events. Olivia, consumed by a mixture of anger and resentment, could not bear Grace's success. "It can't go on like this. She can't be victorious," Olivia said to herself, looking at her reflection in the mirror. With anger growing, Olivia decided to take action. During a conversation with Marcella, an equally influential friend, he had the idea of hiring a private detective. "You need to be smart, Olivia. Everyone has a secret. Find something that could ruin her," suggested Marcella. Olivia hired one of the city's best detectives, instructing him to comb through every detail of Grace's life. Meanwhile, in public, she maintained the facade of a kind friend. Whenever she had the opportunity, Olivia would throw sarcastic comments disguised as compliments. "Grace, who knew you had so much hidden talent?" he said with a fake smile at an event. Grace, although grateful for the praise she was receiving, began to feel a growing tension in her interactions with Olivia. There was something about the way Olivia looked at her and spoke that gave her goosebumps. Despite this, Grace remained determined to focus on her career and provide a better life for Daniel, her son. One night, while they were having dinner, Daniel asked, "Mom, why is Miss Olivia always around? She doesn't like you, does she?" Grace took a deep breath, searching for the right words to reassure her son. "Don't worry about it, son. Some people have difficulty accepting the success of others, but that won't stop us." Daniel nodded, but the discomfort remained. The atmosphere between Olivia and Grace was about to explode. While Grace gained more notoriety, Olivia worked in secret to unearth something that could ruin the singer's life once and for all. After days of waiting, the detective hired by Olivia finally brought information. With a serious expression, he revealed, many years ago, Grace was accused of theft. At the time, she worked as a maid in a wealthy house and was accused of stealing valuable jewelry. The evidence mysteriously disappeared, and the case was never solved. Olivia took the dossier handed over by the detective, an evil smile appearing on her face. "This is perfect. I'm going to expose this secret and finish her off," he said, beginning to meticulously plan how he would reveal Grace's past. Olivia decided to organize a press conference to expose everything in a devastating way. On the day of the event, she dressed to the nines and took to the stage with an air of triumph. The media was in attendance, eager to hear what the influential Olivia had to say. "Today I'm here to reveal a shocking truth about Grace, the singer everyone knows and admires," Olivia began, her tone serious and calculated. Grace, watching the live broadcast from home, felt her heart sink. He knew that the past mentioned by Olivia was an unfair accusation that had almost destroyed her life. "Mum, what's going on?" Daniel asked, his eyes full of concern. "It was a long time ago, son. It wasn't true, but now everyone will believe it was," Grace replied with tears in her eyes. At the conference, Olivia detailed the theft accusation. He described how a young Grace had been accused of stealing jewelry from the house where she worked, how the evidence had disappeared, and how, despite being cleared, the stigma remained. Grace, wiping away her tears, made a firm decision. "I won't let this destroy us, Daniel. Let's prove the truth." Determined, she began planning how she would weather the media storm that Olivia had unleashed. The impact of the press conference was devastating. The accusations made by Olivia made headlines and spread quickly across social media. Negative comments flooded posts relating to Grace, and her integrity was called into question by many who had previously admired her career. When she woke up the next morning, Grace's phone was full of notifications. Messages, calls, and news arrived from all sides. Each click brought more pain. His unfairly distorted past was being discussed in public as if it were absolute truth. "Mum, why are people talking bad about you?" Daniel asked, his face full of concern. Grace took a deep breath, fighting to stay calm. "They're talking about something that happened a long time ago, son, but I promise everything will be fine." As much as she tried to reassure her son, Grace's heart was heavy. She knew she needed to act quickly. The first step was to call Lucas, a great friend and partner in the music industry. The intention was to explain the situation and ask for support to face that crisis. "Please, Lucas, you have to believe me. I didn't do anything." "This is all unfair," Grace pleaded during the call. "I believe in you, Grace, but the pressure is enormous. People are talking, and companies are afraid to get involved. We need time to resolve this," Lucas replied, visibly uncomfortable. Grace felt the crushing weight of injustice on her shoulders. Everything she had achieved seemed to fall apart because of a lie from the past, something she had already overcome and buried. At a glance, he saw Daniel playing in a corner of the room, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. He was her biggest reason to move forward. "I'm not going to let this get us down, Daniel. We're going to find a way to prove the truth, Grace murmured, determined to fight for both of them. Despite this inner strength, reality was cruel. Social media was filled with negative comments, many old followers were moving away, and Grace began to feel isolated and desperate. Even so, the flame of determination within her was still burning. It was time to act. Grace decided to give her version of the facts. He looked for a respected journalist and managed to organize an exclusive interview. On that occasion, he opened his heart to the public, explaining what had really happened. I was young and vulnerable. I was wrongly accused, but the evidence disappeared because I was innocent. I never stole anything, said Grace with tears in her eyes, facing the camera directly. Although her sincerity touched many, Olivia, always ahead of the curve, had other tricks up her sleeve. Shortly after the interview, he released new documents and manipulations of testimony that strengthened the accusation against Grace. Public opinion, which had begun to divide, turned against the singer once again. "She's lying. We can't trust her," declared one commentator on a talk show. Grace felt her despair rising. His followers on social media were dwindling every day, and job opportunities practically disappeared. The bills were piling up, and Daniel's future was at stake. Despite this, she promised not to give up. "Mum, are we going to be okay?" Daniel asked, noticing the growing tension in the house. "Yes, son, we'll be fine, I promise. I won't give up," Grace replied, hugging him tightly. Deciding to turn the tables, she began investigating on her own. He reviewed old documents, contacted people who might remember the incident, and tried to piece it together. With every step, he bumped into barriers imposed by Olivia's influence, but his determination didn't waver. "I will prove my innocence no matter what," she whispered to herself as she spent sleepless nights analyzing papers and records. The battle seemed endless, but Grace didn't allow herself to give up. With the certainty that the truth was on her side, she knew she needed to find the definitive proof that would dismantle Olivia's hoax. Despite the fatigue and weight of the fight, Grace's resilience was unshakable. On a decisive afternoon, she gathered trusted allies. Amelia, a former co-worker, and Benjamin, a loyal lawyer, met with Grace in a discreet coffee shop, away from prying eyes. "Olivia is destroying my life. The only way to stop this is to reveal who she really is," Grace said, urgency written all over her face. "We're on your side. We know you're innocent. Where do we start?" Amelia asked, determined to help. Benjamin, with his legal experience, suggested they start by investigating Olivia's financial records and seeking statements from former employees. From this plan, Grace gained access to old documents that revealed suspicious inconsistencies. One of the biggest clues came from a former accountant at Olivia's company, who was fired under murky circumstances. "Olivia bribed people to spread lies about you, including journalists," Benjamin revealed, showing documents confirming the corruption. Grace felt a mixture of relief and indignation. Relief at finally having something solid against Olivia, and anger at having been so cruelly manipulated. "This is just the beginning. We need something stronger to completely unmask her," Grace declared, her determination renewed. The following weeks were intense. The team found evidence of bribes, manipulated contracts, and money diverted to secret offshore accounts. Olivia, who previously appeared to be an impeccable businesswoman, was involved in a web of crimes. "Amelia, we need reliable journalists to get this out in the right way," Grace asked, as she reviewed the documents with Benjamin. "We are ready to expose everything, but we need to act cautiously. Olivia still has a lot of power," Benjamin warned. "We can't wait any longer. Let's do this publicly so everyone can see the truth once and for all," Grace replied decisively. With the plan in place, Grace organized a large press conference. On the appointed day, the room was full of journalists and cameras, all paying attention to what would be revealed. "Good afternoon. Today I'm here to present the truth about the accusations against me and expose Olivia's crimes," Grace began, with firmness in her voice. She presented a complete dossier, documents proving bribes, financial fraud, and manipulated statements. "These bank records show transfers to secret accounts. Here is proof that Olivia paid witnesses to lie and journalists to publish fake news," Grace declared, displaying the papers. Reporters fell silent, shocked by the extent of the evidence. Questions began to emerge as the cameras focused on the documents, broadcasting everything to the public. Grace continued to reveal the magnitude of Olivia's illegal activities, exposing how she manipulated public opinion to destroy her life and accumulate wealth through lies and corruption. Today the truth finally comes out. I'm here to clear my name and ensure justice is served, Grace declared, with tears of determination in her eyes. At the end of the conference, the press was overcome by an atmosphere of shock and indignation. The news spread quickly, and public opinion began to change. People began to see Olivia's true colors, and support for Grace grew by the minute. Although she knew the battle was far from over, Grace felt she had taken a huge step toward regaining her dignity and securing a better future for herself and Daniel. Olivia, in turn, was furious. Grace's conference exposed her illegal activities to the world, and now Olivia needed to act quickly to save her reputation. Sitting in her luxurious office, she took out her cell phone and recorded a video. His face was contorted with rage, and his voice brimmed with anger and contempt. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I come to clarify the lies that have been told about me, he began, looking directly at the camera, trying to remain calm. The accusations made by Grace are completely false and unfounded. I am the victim of a smear campaign. I have always been an honest and dedicated businesswoman. All of the documents she presented were fabricated and manipulated. The truth will come out and I will prove my innocence, he concluded, turning off the camera with a sudden gesture. The video was immediately published on Olivia's social media, where it quickly gained views and comments. Many of his followers were confused, not knowing who to believe. But Olivia didn't stop there. She had more tricks up her sleeve to continue her campaign against Grace. Over the next few days, Grace began receiving threatening messages. Initially, these were just anonymous comments on social media, but they soon turned into direct messages, emails, and even phone calls. The threats were varied, but they all had the same tone of hatred and intimidation. You're going to pay for this, Grace. You don't know who you're messing with, one of the anonymous messages read. You messed with the wrong person. Olivia is powerful and influential. It won't stay that way, threatened another message. Grace felt a chill run down her spine when she read those words. He tried to remain calm, but he knew the situation was starting to affect his life. She locked herself in the house with Daniel, fearing for their safety. Benjamin and Amelia continued to support her, but the pressure was enormous. Benjamin, worried, warned, "These threats are becoming more and more serious. We have to report this to the police. We cannot let Olivia continue this persecution." The situation intensified, and the hate messages did not stop. Some were particularly cruel and tried to demoralize Grace. "You are a pathetic cleaner. You should never have left where you came from. You deserve nothing more than the mess you clean up," said one of them, full of contempt. Feeling completely helpless, Grace decided to go to the police station to file a complaint. She knew she needed to protect herself and Daniel. However, Olivia, in a strategic move, continued to use her power and influence to turn public opinion in her favor, trying to further fuel tension and hatred against Grace. With each passing day, Grace felt the pressure increasing. Anonymous threats have become more frequent and frightening. I knew I had to be strong, but the situation was becoming untenable, thought Grace. Benjamin and Amelia's help was essential, but the feeling of being chased everywhere was overwhelming. "Mum, come on, be safe," Daniel asked, his eyes full of fear. "Yes, son, we'll be fine." "Well, I promise you," Grace replied, trying to hide her own insecurity. Despite the difficult situation, Grace continued to fight. She knew the truth was on her side and that she needed to stand firm to protect her and Daniel's future. Olivia's threats only reinforced her determination to expose the businesswoman's true face and clear her name once and for all. In the days following Olivia's press conference, the anonymous threats became increasingly intense. Cancelled deals, constant pressure, and an increasingly hostile environment began to take a toll on Grace's physical and mental health. She began to feel exhausted and unmotivated. spending sleepless nights worrying about Daniel's future and wondering how her life had gotten to this point. "I just wanted a better life for myself and my son," Grace said, her voice weak and full of despair. "Grace, you are strong. We are here to help you get through this. Don't give up," Amelia replied, holding Grace's hand tenderly. But despite Amelia and Benjamin's support, Grace's situation worsened. She began to faint, lost her appetite, and began to visibly lose weight. Sleepless nights began to generate increasingly frequent anxiety attacks. Benjamin, worried, tried to convince her, "Grace, you need to see a doctor. You can't go on like this." "No, Benjamin, I have to keep fighting. I can't stop now," Grace replied, but she knew her body was no longer cooperating. One morning, after a particularly difficult night, Grace passed out at home. Scared, Daniel called Amelia and Benjamin, who quickly took her to the hospital. Grace was hospitalized due to extreme fatigue and symptoms of severe depression. The doctor explained, "The pressure and stress were too much for her. We need to keep her under observation and provide the appropriate treatment for her recovery." In the days that followed, Grace was closely monitored and received psychological support. During this period, he had a lot of time to reflect on everything that was happening. Amelia and Benjamin's constant visits were a comfort, but the emotional pain was still intense. "Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve all this?" Grace lamented, with tears streaming down her face. "Grace, this isn't your fault. It's Olivia's fault. She tried to destroy you, but you're stronger than she thinks. We'll get through this together," Benjamin replied, trying to give his friend hope. Grace's anxiety attacks became frequent, and she felt trapped in a cycle of fear and despair. However, with the support of Amelia and Benjamin, she began to take small steps towards recovery. Daniel also always visited his mother, bringing drawings and small souvenirs to make her smile. "Mom, I made this for you. It's a flower, I know you love it," said Daniel, handing her a colorful drawing. "I like flowers," Grace said, holding the drawing fondly. "Thank you, my love. I will fight with all my strength to look good for you," replied Grace, her eyes full of determination. Over time, hospitalization and treatment began to produce results. Grace, little by little, began to regain the strength she had lost. She knew she still had a long battle ahead of her, but her time in the hospital gave her the clarity she needed to keep fighting. With Amelia and Benjamin by her side, she began planning her return. "When you get out of here, we're going to end this once and for all. You're not alone," Amelia said with determination. "Yes, when I get out of here, I'm going to fight with all my strength. I'm not going to let Olivia win," Grace replied, feeling a new flame of determination light up inside her. Grace's recovery was not easy. They were difficult days in the hospital, facing an internal struggle against fear, pain, and frustration. But finally, the discharge day arrived. When she left the hospital, she was no longer the same person. What once seemed like an endless nightmare now turned into renewed motivation. Olivia was still out there, and Grace knew the battle wasn't over. However, she felt stronger, more determined, and ready to put an end to the hell the woman had caused in her life. Amelia, always by his side, was equally resolute. "With you, we will face this together," she said, as she helped Grace walk out of the hospital. Amelia's support was all Grace needed at that moment. Grace's mind was firm. Yes, it's time to end this once and for all. Olivia will pay for everything she did. The sparkle in Grace's eyes demonstrated her courage and certainty that this was the moment. With the support of Benjamin and Amelia, Grace began to hatch an audacious plan to expose Olivia. He knew that the only way to end the woman's tyranny was to confront her publicly, showing everyone who Olivia really was. And she found the perfect event for it. A huge charity gala where members of the city's elite would be in attendance, including many of Olivia's wealthy former friends. If justice was going to be done, it was there, in front of everyone, that it had to be done. Benjamin, with his strategic help, gathered all the necessary documents, records of the anonymous threats that Grace had been receiving, evidence of compromising financial documents, and testimonies from witnesses willing to tell the truth. With these weapons in hand, Grace's courage grew even more. On the night of the event, The hall was full of elegant people, wearing luxurious clothes and an atmosphere of ostentation in the air. Olivia, always impeccable, circulated among the guests in her stunning dress, trying to remain calm, even though she knew something was about to happen. But she didn't know how far Grace was willing to go. With a deep sigh, Grace discreetly entered the hall. I felt the weight of that moment, but I was determined to take the last step towards freedom. Standing next to Benjamin, who was carrying a folder full of documents, Grace felt a surge of confidence. They had everything they needed. "Benjamin, are you ready?" Grace asked, her tone firm. "Yes, we have everything we need. We will do it," he replied, with the same determination in his eyes. When Grace approached the center stage, a microphone awaited her for her speech. The host, surprised, gave way, realizing that what was coming was serious. The ambient music faded, and all eyes turned to Grace. "Good evening, everyone. I know this is a charity event, but I ask for your attention for a moment. What I have to say is extremely important," Grace began, her voice firm and clear. Olivia, realizing what was about to happen, tried to maintain her composure. He knew the confrontation was inevitable, but he had no idea how far the evidence would go. She wasn't ready for what Grace had in store. Grace took a deep breath and continued. "Over the past few weeks, I have been receiving anonymous threats. At first I thought they were just cruel words from strangers, but I soon realized that these threats were coming from a very specific source." And with those words, Grace's story was just beginning to be revealed. As Benjamin began distributing copies of the anonymous threats to the press, a murmur of surprise soon spread throughout the room. Journalists, upon reading the messages, began to realize the gravity of the situation. Grace, without hesitation, continued with her speech. "These messages," he began, "said that I had upset a rich and influential person and that I should never leave my place. They were humiliating and terrifying." As Grace spoke, images of the threats were projected onto a giant screen, leaving everyone in the room in shock. Olivia, who was there trying to maintain her composure, began to sweat but still forced an artificial smile, as if nothing was happening. However, she didn't know what came next. With unbeatable calm, Grace continued. "I investigated the origin of these threats and discovered that they were all linked to the same person. Olivia, you used your power and influence to try to destroy my life. Here are the records of the bank transfers you made to pay witnesses and bribe journalists. And here is proof that you were responsible for all the threats I received." Benjamin, with a folder full of documents, began distributing them to reporters, who quickly took photos and made notes. The revelations fell like a bomb among Olivia's rich former friends, who began to murmur among themselves, trying to deny the veracity of the accusations. "It's not true! This is all a lie!" shouted Olivia, desperate, trying to regain control of the situation. But it was too late. Grace had conclusive evidence. Little by little, the police officers who were present at Benjamin's request began to approach Olivia. "Olivia Rodriguez, you are under arrest for bribery, threats, and financial fraud. You have the right to remain silent," one of the officers said as he placed handcuffs on Olivia. The entire room was completely silent. The scene was broadcast live to everyone present, while Olivia was taken away by the police. A relieved Grace looked out at the audience and, with tears of gratitude in her eyes, said, "Thank you, everyone, for listening to the truth. I just wanted to clear my name and protect my son. Today, justice was served." The applause began timidly, but soon turned into a warm ovation full of support for Grace. She came down from the stage, where she was greeted with a tight hug from Amelia and Benjamin. "You did it, Grace," Amelia said, visibly moved. "Justice has finally been served." Grace, her voice firm and calm, replied, "Yes, we did it. Now we can start again, free from all fear and oppression." The revenge was accomplished, and the public confrontation had resolved the conflict. Olivia had her true nature exposed to everyone, while Grace regained her dignity and the peace she craved. Now she could move forward with her head held high, knowing that she had fought and won. In the days that followed, the media quickly shifted focus to Grace's story of resilience. The audience was moved by his courage and resilience in the face of so much adversity. Grace's music career, which seemed to have been destroyed by Olivia's lies, began to flourish again. With the help of Lucas, the music producer who had discovered her, she began working on new projects, receiving invitations to perform at important events, and even recording an album. Every performance he gave was met with enthusiasm and support from the audience. Grace felt like she was finally reaping the rewards of her effort and talent. Meanwhile, Olivia's life was falling apart. She was convicted of fraud, bribery, and the threats she had made against Grace. Her financial empire collapsed, and the life of luxury she built went down the drain. Olivia's wealthy former friends abandoned her, and she found herself alone, paying for the atrocities she committed. Feeling the weight of the consequences of her own actions, Olivia saw her life crumble before her eyes. Grace, on the other hand, finally felt free. Justice was served, her name was cleared, and she was able to move forward with a clear conscience. Her story became an example of resilience and justice for all, and she, together with her son Daniel, lived happily, surrounded by the support of loyal friends like Amelia and Benjamin. She knew her journey hadn't been easy, but each challenge had made her stronger. Now she could finally enjoy the success and happiness she so deserved. If you like this story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support is essential to help us continue our work. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories like this.